Hi, I'm Diana, and I'm an addict.
Okay, I'm good.
And I'm supposed to share my experience, strength, and hope. So my experience is I got loaded for a long time. I had a really good time for several years. In 1997, I was, so there was a time from the time I was 18 until I was 30, I knew I was a drug addict and I tried to control my using, right? And our literature talks about that. And so before I got clean, my mom got me a copy of our basic text, and I used to read it, loaded. And I would always be able to relate to how they felt, and the desperation and the hopelessness and the despair. And so in 97, my solution, because I couldn't stop using, and I always maintained that I was a normie. I always had a job and all that stuff, and I just couldn't fight my disease anymore. I couldn't live the double life anymore, so I thought, I'll just kill myself. So I got loaded that day, and I took a bottle of sleeping pills. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I had a moment of clarity. And I called our helpline. And I was directed to a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. And I had gone to a meeting a couple of years before that when I was using every day. I was being evicted from my apartment. My car had a boot on it, and I was getting ready to lose my job. And I saw all the differences. I didn't see any of the similarities. And so I continued to go get loaded for a couple more years. And for whatever reason, I was ready to hear the message of Narcotics Anonymous when I went to my meeting that day. So I called the helpline and I got directed to a meeting. It was in Nooner. I got clean in another county. And I went to that meeting and I heard the message that I never had to use again, even if I wanted to. And for whatever reason, I heard that and I got it. Because of throughout my using, I always used against my will, right? I tried to control my using from the time I was 18 until I got clean, and then I would drive to the connections house not wanting to get loaded and still get loaded, right? And so for whatever reason, when I heard you say that, my obsession was lifted from me that day. And not to say that I stayed clean that day, but I didn't have that monkey on my back. And I was told to, there were some things that I was going to have to do in order to arrest my disease. And that was go to meetings on a regular basis, get a sponsor and work the steps, and get in service to this fellowship, and get a higher power. And I had a higher power when I got here, and I wanted to make sure that you guys knew who my higher power was, so I would change the readings. And an old timer pulled me aside and didn't embarrass me in the meeting, pulled me aside and said, the readings are written as for a reason, and read them as written. And so that's where my journey in recovery started. Since I came in from the helpline, I didn't have anybody telling me when to clean my house, or when to take a shower, or not to sleep around, or not to steal anymore. I just stopped getting loaded, right? And I still called in sick for work when I thought it was a good idea, even if I wasn't sick. And I still stole, and I still slept around, and I still did all of that stuff that I did when I was getting loaded. I just wasn't putting in because I was using other things to put in, right? And so how that worked for me was that I didn't stop doing that stuff until I got uncomfortable with how I felt inside, right? Like it stopped working, right? So I took the drugs away, and then I was going to use this, and that worked for a minute, and then that stopped working, and then I was going to use this. And so it wasn't until I started actually working the steps of Narcotics Anonymous and getting to take a look at how I'm powerless over and how that makes my life unmanageable, and then getting to choose the qualities that my higher power had, because that's the thing about Narcotics Anonymous, is that we get to pick our own higher power. If you told me that I had to believe what you believed, I would have like left, because I didn't believe the same like dogma. And so since I've been clean, my understanding of my higher power has, I don't know, I think I understand it less now than I did when I was new, but it's grown, and it's not in a box anymore, and it's not a gender anymore, and it keeps me clean every day. So, you know, I started working the steps, and so I got to see the patterns of the things that I do, because my disease is in my head, right? And so once I took the drugs away, I had to learn how to live with me. And so if I'm doing scandalous stuff, then I'm either going to be pushed up against the wall and get loaded, or I'm going to do something different. And so I did something different, and I started working the steps, and I did a really thorough 4-step. And I'm an incest survivor, so I did counseling for that, along with the 4-step, along with one-on-one counseling. So I did group therapy, one-on-one counseling, and 4-step all at the same time. And don't you know, I probably wanted to slit my throat most days on those sessions. And I had a sponsor who just loved me unconditionally, and she would just hold my hand and hold me when I cried. And she was the first woman, she was the first person that I could trust with everything, right? I knew from experience, because I would tell her things about when I was acting out, and she would just love me unconditionally. She would be like, okay, I'm living vicariously through you, right? And she never judged me, right? And so I got comfortable enough to where I could tell her everything. And then, and I would call her all my drama and stuff, and I'd be like, oh, I'm doing this. And she'd go, did you pray? And I'd be like, she goes, well, hang up, pray, and call me back. And I'd be like, shit. I'm not supposed to cuss, so ooh. So anyway, so I would do that. So I would pray, right? So that first sponsor taught me how to pray. And then I hooked up with him, and she told me, and I was like a year clean at the time. And I thought I had this deal. I was in service. I was working my steps. I was going to meetings on a regular basis. I was doing all the deal, right? And so I saw him in a meeting, and he was a newcomer, and it was like, oh my God. And then I hooked up with him, and he started drinking. And I said, and my sponsor said, if you stay with this man, you're going to get loaded. And I was like, no, I'm good. I got this. So when I say I got this, it's always a red flag, because I don't have this. But so I proceeded to set boundaries with this man. And then, so like he would step over those boundaries, and I'd be like, oh, okay, here, let me set a different one. And so I'd set a different one. So anyways, long story short, I ended up getting loaded. I woke up one morning, and I made the decision that I was going to drink. And he tried to talk me out of it. He said, call your sponsor. I said, no. He said, call your support group. I said, no. And he said, okay, so if you drink and you don't like it, we won't tell anybody. And I was like, okay, because I'm a dope fiend, and I want to still get over, right? And so I drank, and I passed out. And when I woke up, I said, oh. So I called my sponsor the next day, and I told her what happened. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And by this time, I had a new sponsor, because I changed the nature of the relationship with the other sponsor. So I got this woman, when I first met her, I heard her story, and I said, oh, I am never going to tell my truth like that. She is so vulnerable. She was showing her underbelly, everything. I was like, oh. And then a year later, I asked her to sponsor me, because she had what I wanted, which was to be totally authentic, even if you were going to go away, right? And so she said, what do you want to do? And I had already made Narcotics Anonymous my life. I was already in service. I was already doing the deal. And so I just continued to do what I had been doing for the last year and a half. And so she strongly suggested that I go to meetings for 30 days and raise my hand every time and say, I'm Diana, I'm an addict, and I have however many days it was. And that, for me, was really humbling, because I run on pride and ego still to this day. And so doing that, it was really humbling for me, and I never want to experience that again. And so I had to start my steps over again, because obviously I didn't get that I was powerless, right? And that it made my life unmanageable. And one is too many and 1,000 never enough. I didn't get that part. So thank goodness my relapse was only a beer and a half, but that was over 17 years ago, and I have not found it necessary to pick up since then. There's been circumstances in my life since I've been clean that I wanted to get loaded. There's been, and I haven't, right? Because the fellowship has held me up. There's been circumstances where I've wanted to die in recovery, and I haven't acted on that because I reached out and I asked for women to help me. And every time I have been at my bottom in recovery, I've been really fortunate enough to ask for help. And my higher power puts people in my life that help me stay clean, right? And so I started my recovery over again. I started the steps over again, and I've had some things happen in the last 17 plus years. So I was in a long-term relationship, which was never the case out there. I was married for like a minute, and I said I'd never do that again. So I learned how to be in relationship with a significant other in recovery and not run, right? Because I was always a runner, right? I would, 3 to 7 months tops. And so I was in a relationship with this man for 8.5 years, and helping him raise his son. And then we were in a car accident, and people came to my house and brought me food and brought me meetings, and I went to my first meeting after the car accident, and I was still like, people were like, damn, what happened? Because I was all black and blue, and I still had, glass from my face, scars from my face, but I was in a meeting. I went to a meeting, you know what I mean? I was still all sore, and that's how it's worked for me, you know what I mean? I just keep showing up. I just keep doing the next right thing, and then that relationship ended, and I was devastated, and I didn't want to get loaded though. I wanted to die, but I didn't want to get loaded. And so my girls held me up. I had formed a support group of some women who knew me inside and out. We had a book study at my house every other week. It was some of my sponsee sisters and my sponsor, and we were doing some other work, and it was, they held me up, like they babysit me. My best friend slept on my couch for 2 weeks during that time, and didn't leave me alone. And then I was in service to this fellowship at regional level, and so I met my husband. He's now my husband, but we met in service, and then so that's how I got to this fellowship. This county was by hooking up with him, and then when I was finished with school. And so I've been able to get 3 degrees in recovery, and because I learned how to do that stuff by working the steps, like perseverance. I just had to persevere. Like being in school for 12 years, like I never would have done that out there. I used to enroll in school all the time, but I would either drop the class. When I first started back in school clean, I had lots of zeros and lots of F's and lots of W's because I could never complete anything, right? So I've been able to follow my dreams, right? I don't have any children of my own because when I was out there, my form of birth control was abortion. And so for whatever reason, my higher power, I haven't gotten pregnant since I've been clean. And so I don't have children of my own. However, I have the gift of being really good with children and young adults. And so I have a job where I get to help kids with special needs. And I don't know if I would be able to do that if I had my own kid, be patient all day at work and then come home and be patient with a child. So, I get to make a difference in these kids' lives, and I get to bond with them because they're with me for a duration. They're with me longer than, a year. And that's a gift, right? And I only get to do that because I'm clean and because I learned how to persevere and finish what I started. And in service, like I've been in service since I got clean. Like I was still vibrating my first service commitment. I was coffee girl. And then I was secretary. And then I was GSR. And I was going to totally show you how to run Narcotics Anonymous, because you don't know how to do it. You're violating the traditions. And so I was really militant. And I'm not quite so militant anymore. But, so I've always been in service to this fellowship. And I've worked all 12 steps several times. And I have girls that I work with who have completed all 12 steps. It's amazing. And they have girls, and it's like my favorite movie. That movie, Pay It Forward, that's like my favorite movie, and that is what Narcotics Anonymous is like, right? So like, we get this gift, and then we give it to somebody else, and then they give it to somebody else, and it just spreads out, and it's like this huge worldwide fellowship that's just, it's divine. There's no other word for it, and I'm eternally grateful for Narcotics Anonymous and the life that I live today. Like, so I got married in Jamaica. Yeah, man. We got off the plane and they offered us a pot and we're like, no, we're good. And, we did a wedding moon and I have my career. Like, I'm not just like working at a job. I have a career where like, I have retirement. That was never the freaking plan, right? My plan was for me to be dead by the time I was 30. Well, that didn't happen. So, like those things are important to me today. Like, so I make grown-up money so I can travel, right? Because I love to travel. And so this is what's currently happening in my life. How much time do I have?
You're good.
Okay, so when I was a kid, my real dad, my mom left, anyways, long story short, I disowned my real father when I was 14, and I cut him out of my life. So 33 years later, a couple of years ago, I was in service and I was on Facebook, and I got a friend request from a lady, and I had no idea who it was because her name was different. And I went to her page, and it was my dad's sister. So anyway, so my dad and I started talking again, like 2 years ago. And we never know where we need to give an amends, right? So like, I thought it was self-preservation when I disowned him when I was 14. But when I did that, I cut everybody on that side of the family out of my life, right? So my grandparents, all of my siblings, my cousins, everybody on that side of the family, they haven't seen me since I was 14, and they hadn't seen me before that since I was 6 months old. So I've been doing a living amends to my grandmother because my grandfather, he died in 99. So I can't make a living amends to him, but I can to my grandmother, and she was in the hospital last summer, and so I went to see her, and she told me, she says, darling, I've never stopped loving you. So I get to do that, right? And I get to make an amends to my brother and sister who I walked out of their lives when they were little. And then I have a new sister that I didn't even know existed until like 2 years ago, who's 33. Wow, what is that? And my dad and I are building a relationship, right? And so I shared with my mom recently, I said, okay, so just so you know, you are on my next 4-step and he's on my next 4-step. And so like I get to do the work about the resentments that I carry for that stuff, right? And own my part, because walking out of his life, disowning him because he didn't meet my expectations, right? Because that's what a bottom line is about. He couldn't be what I thought he should be to me. And so I cut him out of my life because it was less painful. I get to do that work, right? And I get to do healing around that. And then I get to make my amends. And then every day I get to live by spiritual principles by doing a 10th and 11th and 12th step, right? And so I have a phenomenal relationship with my higher power. I feel closest to my higher power when I'm at the beach, and that's when I can quiet my head and just listen to the ocean and smell the salt water and hear the waves. And you know, I keep doing the next right thing. And when I don't, my sponsor calls me on it because I still try and get away with little things sometimes. And then we'll have our little meeting because my sponsor and I meet every other week. And I'll be like, we'll be checking in, and like right near the end of the meeting, I'll go, oh, and by the way, blah, blah, blah. And I'll share something with her. She's like, whoa, wait a minute. And she'll like, you know, she'll tell me to write about that, or I need to make an amends for that, or whatever. And so you know what I mean? So like I'm a work in progress. Thank God I don't have to be perfect. And I get to live my life free from active addiction. I don't want to go anywhere else. For me, Narcotics Anonymous has been my solution, right? It's the easier, softer way. I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore to see if the cops are chasing me. All my insurance is paid, my registration is paid. Freaking, you know, I don't have to call in sick for my job anymore. I don't have to get worried about being pulled over if I have a bag of dope in my pocket. You know, I mean, I don't have those problems, right? Like, I have gold-plated problems today. Like, oh, where are we gonna put the new bed we got, right? I'm just gonna keep coming back, thanks.